Welcome to Studio 369, Smooth Radio, featuring April.
We'll get started here shortly, guys. Just gonna wait a few more minutes to let people come on in. Listen to the smooth tunes of Studio 369.
We got lo-fi beats to blow up Mechs to 24/7.
Beautiful. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first World of Mechs AMA. Now to just go over a few things on how to ask questions. So we have two options. You can use the text channel right above this channel called AMA Questions. You can type your questions there and I will read them out loud. Second way is down below on the World of Mechs stage. There is a request to speak button, which you can request to speak directly to us and ask your questions. Now to go over some introductions, my name is Nova and I am the community manager for Studio 369. And I will go ahead and let everyone else introduce themselves, starting with James.
Cool. Hey, I'm James. I do design on World of Mechs at Studio 369.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm Dan. I'm the CTO of Studio 369. I lead most of the tech and programming efforts.
What's up, guys? I am Will, lead environment artist at Studio 369.
Morning, everybody. Name is Josh. I am the secondary community manager here for World of Mechs and Studio 369.
Hey, awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and kick off with some AMA text questions. First one is from Nobody. How long until customized servers and stat tracking? I know a lot of us are clamoring for team clan play, but it can be very frustrating trying to put a match together with a specific group of people. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So it's going to be the next feature that we start working on for an August patch. Our pacing so far has been trying to get out a patch every week. We missed a few weeks in early July due to vacations, but generally what we're going to be trying to do is putting out a small patch every week and then shooting for a larger patch once a month. So it'll be like, small patch, small patch, small patch, big patch. So the big patch in August is going to be a private server patch. And what that means is basically, to begin with at least, we're going to have a pool of private servers that are, the way it's going to work is they're going to be, while they're empty, they're going to be registered as like anybody can take them over. And so when you click in your multiplayer screen, when you click start private match, you'll be able to open a screen that says, I want to start a private match. Tune all your settings, like how many, like whether or not you want bots active or just humans, how many human players, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, what modes you want on off, what maps you want on off, maybe some other settings like, various rules or time limits or whatever, right? And then when you hit start private server, you'll be able, what it'll do is it'll find one of the empty ones, it'll apply your settings, and then it'll register that as your private server. And then your friends will be able to, you can set it as publicly joinable, or you can set it as private so that only your friends can join, or it's password protected. So only people who you give the password to can join. And that way you can organize your own like friends playing in your own, essentially your own private server without having to deal with other people. And just organize your own teams that way, essentially. Or it can be used to do like competitive tournaments and stuff like that. In terms of like matching in with your friends, we're still targeting that feature for later. So basically we're gonna give you the private servers first and let you manage all of the like teams and how competitive you want it to be and how exactly it's all gonna work. We're trying to get that out to you as soon as we can. So in August, hopefully we'll have that for you. The other part of that question was also the stat tracking. That's probably going to be in one of the smaller updates that we do. I don't know if we're going to get to that in August. We may, at the minimum, we probably will be able to display some simple stuff like how many lifetime kills and deaths and damage and etc. you've done in your account. But for more complex stat tracking, like per class, like per mech stats, and leaderboards, that's going to take a little longer. So we'll shoot for the simpler stat tracking also sometime in August, which will be locally saved. It won't be like a global leaderboard, but global leaderboards will be probably sometime after that. So maybe in September. Yeah.
All right, awesome. I hope that answers your question. All right, next one is from Blue Bottles. Jumping seems to be a thing. Is there any talk about higher jumping?
Yeah, I can take that one. So one big thing with jumping and jump jets is we want to make it more like a jetpack where you can kind of start it over if you're already in the air and you can kind of like feather it. We're gonna have to balance that out with heat and like how that all feels because you don't want to be able to jump forever. So that's definitely in the plans. I think it'll feel better because there are a lot of times when you're trying to get up to a high spot and you need to kind of feather it, you don't have the opportunity to. But with a more jetpack feel, I think it would feel great. And I think that would lead to higher jumps overall, but I don't want to promise jumping to the moon.
Yeah, no jumping to the ceiling.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's ceilings as well, right? So those are like, if we were to accommodate any changes to jump jets, like ceilings would have to be raised as well. And one of the things is in the map designs we do have ceilings set so as to prevent like exploiting in certain areas and things like that. But that would just have to augment basically more work on top of like anything that is done with the player height.
100%.
All right, awesome. I hope that answers your question, Blue Bottles. Next couple set of questions are from Maniac. I think these are a lot of questions people have been wondering about. First one is about stream chat integration, specifically probably Live. Is there anything in the works for that?
That's a Dan question.
Can you repeat that?
Stream chat integration, like for example, Live.
Oh, we might do that. It's definitely not going to come anytime in the next month or two. But one of the things that we're that we're talking about is supporting like esports, and with that will come obviously supporting streamers, and with that will come supporting all those like kind of secondary things that are nice for them, right? So I think that's the sort of thing that one of the long-term visions for World of Mechs that we have is that we want to port to multiple other platforms. We want to keep it cross-play. So you'll be able to, like, one of the platforms we're talking about right now is Pico. Hopefully we'll be able to execute cross-play between Pico and Oculus. And obviously, we're talking about Steam. We're talking about PSVR. So the more platforms we get, the more people that we can get in the ecosystem, the better it'll be for us to invest time in things that are like, because like for streamers, right? Like what the thing that we want to do is support streamers as it starts to become like more like beneficial for them to play the game, right? So we have to like time the features that we put in to support them with the community expanding and gaining additional interest. So basically, we definitely want to do all of that stuff, but we want to do it. We want to prioritize it in the right way. So it's like if we spend all this time working on features, but we haven't built our community, like and we haven't expanded our market, right? So that's kind of the situation we're in now. It's like we love to do all of it at the same time, but we can't, right? So it's like every month we have to decide what's the major thing we want to do. Right now, what we're still focusing on is making sure that the core game on Quest 2 is just super, super solid and that nobody has anything to complain about or worry about, or like there's no issues with what people just generally want to do on a day-to-day basis. So that's going to be our continued focus for the next probably 2 to 3 months, is to continue to execute that vision and then make it so that the game is essentially in a spot where people could just play for a year and be very happy with where it is. And when we get to that point, we'll be able to focus down a little bit more on some of these longer term things, because some things are going to take longer than a month to do. And that's going to be like, once we're in a spot where we're like, we think this is like a really, really good representation of what we want the game to be on Quest 2, we can start to think about bigger things like that.
Yeah, to piggyback onto what Dan is saying, I mean, part of the prioritization and reason why we have all these plans set out in terms of like these milestone goals is so that we can time everything to where they make sense. Releasing like live support for streamers where the population of streamers playing the game would drastically increase because of tournament systems or leaderboards, right? And you'll start to see a lot more streamers trying to jump on board in that angle, and that just works out better for us since we have such a small team working on it. So really, it's about organizing, and the best thing you guys could do is to take a look at our roadmap and the suggestions you make, like do they make sense in this specific set of days, and that is a suggestion you can always like forward over to Ash or Nova.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answers one of your questions, Maniac. I'm gonna get some of these other questions in, not all of them. I do apologize. I think one of the questions you asked is at what everybody is wondering about. He's asking about an in-game add a friend button, like being able to add friends from the leaderboards.
Yes, that's going to be something that we're shooting to get into one of the smaller patches, hopefully sometime in August. So, we have a small team working on this stuff, so it's hard for us to promise that features like that are going to be in, because the thing that we want to promise we get in is private servers for August. So that we're making a promise by the end of August, we'll have private servers for you guys. But, all of the other smaller things, it's like, yeah, there's 10 things that people really want. Maybe we'll get to 6 of them, right? So it's like, we might do a poll too and ask you guys like, hey, we have to prioritize these features. Which are your top 3 or something like that, and go based on what you guys say you think is most important, and not just from the perspective of people already playing, but from the perspective also of new people who are picking up the game for the first time. Because one of the things that we're seeing with Quest 2, which we didn't previously anticipate, having never shipped a game on the Quest 2 store before, is that there's a really long tail of people buying the game. Most games, like, you get all your sales in the first couple weeks, and then like you get a much smaller trickle in of new players, unless it's going crazy. Our game, like, we're still getting constant players coming in for the first time playing the game. I'm sure your ace pilots have seen that, right? So what can we do from your perspective to make life better for them? Those are the things that we're going to prioritize in patch number 1, and to help grow the community. I mean, like, things like driving people to our Discord, things like adding friends just incentivizes people to play the game more, because when they add friends, they're playing World of Mechs, and they see them playing World of Mechs, they're more likely to play it more, right? So we want to do that's probably high up on our list, like adding friends from scoreboard and from post match screens and stuff like that. So that I think we probably prioritize more highly. But again, like, let us know what you think your top ones are.
All right, awesome. I hope that answers your question, Maniac. I know you have a couple other questions, but I think the next question will be able to answer that. Next one is from Beck. Can we have fully customizable mechs, from choosing weapons to size of the mech and decals, etc.?
So I'll take that partially. So the problem with fully customizable mechs, and the reason we've done mechs that have like predefined weapon loadouts, is because on Quest 2 you have extremely limited number of draw calls, and what that means is that there's a limited number of objects that you can have in the game and still stay at 70 FPS, and I mean, like, very, very limited. So what that means is that if every mech, suddenly every weapon is its own thing, then every suddenly, instead of 8 mechs that you're drawing 8 mechs plus 16 weapons. And that, while that doesn't sound like a lot, that severely limits our ability to do cool things in the environment, to make cool effects, etc. So we've decided to go with this approach where we bake everything into the mechs. That's why you have the subclasses where the weapons are predefined and they can't be changed. Now, one thing that we could do is we could do variations on the weapon where they visually look the same, but they work slightly differently. So that's something that we're thinking about doing, where like the laser is still a laser, but it has a significant change to it, where instead of it being like a 3-beam pulse, it is a beam laser or something like that. And you hold it to, and it visually it looks the same because it's a laser, but it works differently. Or like the missiles, if we do one that's like a heat-seeking and one that's laser guided, and that's something that we can add in the future. Fundamentally, it's the same thing. It's just a big LRM, thing strapped onto your mech, but we can make it work differently. So those are the types of things that we do have flexibility to do, and I'll leave that to James to talk about what our plans are around those things.
Yeah, that kind of ties into Maniac's question about like ability cooldown modifiers. There's a bunch of new components and upgrades we want to add. So some of those are related to abilities, some are weapons, accuracy, things like that. Some fun ones would be like various updates to the weapons that are just beyond like reload and stuff like that. And then for ability cooldown modifiers, you could bring the cooldown down, but we also want to do stuff like different versions of the abilities. So along with that would come more component like slots per component, like per mech hull or per weapon. So maybe 2, maybe 3. So we're
Right.
looking at that, and that would be, I think, a lot of the customization that would hopefully satisfy some of those needs. But yeah, a lot of it is limited to tech, like Phoenix said.
Like just to give an example of that, the Juggernaut shield, like drop shield, I think is the most clear thing. Like, you can have a version of it that has less health but lasts a lot longer. You could have a version of it where the ability cooldown is decreased by a ton, but it lasts only for a second or two. You can have a version of it that specifically absorbs endless amount of laser shots, but is vulnerable to missiles, right? Like all of those different things, and we can add components that let you change that. The one thing I will say about like visually changing the mechs that we can do pretty easily, which we are planning to do, is skins. So that is one thing that we're doing, which is we're adding different color variations to the mechs that will allow you to like unlock cosmetic skins for them. We're also talking about doing cockpit skins and cockpit attachments, like visual decals and stuff in the cockpit, so you can see your own cockpit, and maybe like, I mean, this is dumb, but like a dashboard bobblehead, that kind of thing, right? Like something fun that you can unlock and just place in your own cockpit. You wouldn't see it on other mechs, but you would see it like while you're playing. Those are all things that we can and do plan to do. So Parker, I think, did a dev stream where he was showing off some new skins that he was working on for when we add skin unlocks to the game. So those we're adding for sure.
Yeah, and that would include fluffy dice, like Maniac said. Something like that would be really fun.
Yes. That'd be great. Well, I hope that answers your question. Beck also asks about a possibility for a destructible landscape.
That is kind of another one that we're limited by tech.
So a lot of these things, it's like we really want to do them, but so in this version of the game, we were funded by Meta, so we had requirements as to what we could do in terms of we had to ship on Quest 2, we had to ship at a certain frame rate, and it can't go below a certain frame rate, at least not in any sort of consistent way. And so internally we were talking about like, hey, well, what if there's a mode where we do 8v8? Or what if there's a bigger map with destructible stuff, or just cool, other modes where maybe it'll run at 50, and maybe some people on the Quest 2 are okay with that. We, first of all, as we continue doing ports and other platforms that are a little bit more powerful come online, it makes more sense for us to invest time and stuff like that. So, and second, now that we've shipped the game, we actually have a lot more freedom by Meta. Like when we were first shipping the game, we had to go through their pretty strict QA process where it was like everything had to be 100% like 70 frames a second, no matter what. When after you ship a game, they don't kind of hold you to that anymore long term. They kind of let you do what you want. So we may do some sort of like opt-in, like hey, with some sort of a disclaimer or warning. Hey, you're playing with other people on better hardware, and this environment is destructible, or this is an 8v8 mode, and you might be running at 50 or 55 frames a second on the Quest 2, and for some people that might not be good enough. Like for some people you might be like, I don't want to do that because I'll get motion sick, but some people might be okay with it and they might prefer it. So that plus various graphics options and stuff like that make the game look cooler, but maybe at a performance cost. There's always more optimization that we can do to try to squeeze more cool effects and stuff in, but there's also things that we can be like, just you're opting into a slightly lower frame rate for some cool added benefit, and we can do that in the future. Like I said, it makes a little bit more sense for us to invest in things like that as we start porting to other more powerful platforms. So expect to see those sorts of things coming to the Quest 2 version, maybe like late this year or early next year when we start doing our ports.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answers your question. Next question is from No One, aka Rizal. Will there be a limit to private servers? Example, if there are, say, 5 private servers being used with the 6th person to be able to create their own private server.
Well, we are probably going to have some number of servers that are in standby mode for private servers, based on our kind of like historical trends for what our like number of users are. We're not going to do a thing where like every single person gets their own private server, but we should have more than enough in the near future to account for all of our current users of the game, and we have the ability to scale that number fairly quickly in our back end. So as more users come online, we can add more private servers. So in terms of like the total number of servers, the private servers and the public servers aren't really any different. The private servers are just public servers that don't have anyone in them, and when somebody wants to open a private server, they can just join one of the public servers that's empty and convert it into a private server. So it's really just one big pool with different settings for what the servers are like. When the servers are kind of registered in the kind of server list, there's flags for them about like what version of server they are, what mode they're in, how many people are on it, etc. And so inside the client, when you're searching for public servers, you're getting all the servers, private and public, but we can just let you know, hey, don't join any of the private ones unless the private ones are marked as joinable by public players, right? So it's that sort of thing is all built into our plan. So it's as efficient as it can be, and we don't have to have like a million standby servers. We're just going to use the same system that we currently use, which is that we have a number of standby public servers, and then as those fill up, we can scale to add more public servers so that more players can use those. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, awesome. He has a second question as well. Any plans for rivals or a similar system setup?
That would be awesome eventually. I think there are enough other quality of life and feature and content features that we would want to get before that. But that would be on our radar after we do, a fuller, more fleshed out party system and such.
One of the things that we can do is we can track who killed you every time somebody kills you. And so if we our first pass at stats is going to be fairly rudimentary, just like total kills, total deaths, total damage done, bullets fired, rockets fired, etc. Matches won, points captured, VIPs killed, whatever. We're basically already tracking a lot of those stats. We just aren't displaying it. So that's an interesting thing that I didn't bring up, is a lot of these stats are being tracked under the hood and they're just not in the UI. So you guys will get a pleasant surprise one day when we add that to the UI and you'll see, hey, I have, 500 lifetime kills. I didn't realize, it was so many or whatever. So that's one thing. The second thing is, what we can do is we can track every time somebody else kills you, and we can store that, and then we can display something like the person who has killed you the most in like lifetime is this person. And that might be a fun thing for you guys to know. If that's something cool, it's not that hard to do. So, again, like James said, everything has to be prioritized, but if you guys want cool stuff like that, let us know.
All right, awesome. So next question is from Facilio. In the future, will there be the possibility of marking an enemy to engage or avoid, and other similar commands in battle, such as defend, attack, or flank?
Yeah, some type of ping system would be really awesome. I think, with the limited number of buttons on the quest, even we would have to consider how to do that just for UX purposes. But it's something we would consider. I think that would offer a lot of advantage. I know that I like voice chat is pretty active during the game, but for other people who might not want to use that, I think that could come in handy.
Yeah, I agree. I think a ping, like a little waypoint ping that looks kind of like the capture point waypoints, per like maybe one per player on your team, that can be active at any time, or that last 5 seconds or something like that.
Okay, awesome. So next question is from Rizal. If other platforms become available for World of Mechs, will cross-buy be a thing too?
So we can do cross-buy with the Oculus store on PC. So when we come out on PC, we should be able to do cross-buy and allow you to play the PC version via the Oculus store, but probably not the Steam version. Cross-buy doesn't really work between Oculus and PlayStation or any of the other platforms. So that, unfortunately, that's out of our hands. But for the Oculus, like for when we come out on the Rift and when we're out on PC for just generic, PC VR experience, if we go through the Oculus store, you should be able to have cross-buy active there.
Okay, I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Josh Washed Up, and I know we have spoken about this, so I'm glad he mentioned it. A horn in the cockpit, just a button to honk your horn. You could charge into battle and hear a battle horn.
We've talked about this internally. I do think it'd be funny. We'd have to put some type of cooldown on it, but
It'd be
it's a
a lot of fun.
possibility. As you guys know, like one of our big philosophies has been to keep it arcadey and not very simmy, especially for ease of play. Like in different, you don't have to be moving around. That's just not the type of game we're making. So even little things being simulation, such as like pressing a button, I'm a little wary of. But I think for something non-gameplay like that, it could be fun. So that's
there's nothing stopping us from basically making a full sim cockpit, but we just decided not to because that's the goal and direction of the game. There's other games that offer the focused more on this simulative aspects. A lot of us come from the experience of BattleTech and MechWarrior 2 and that whole franchise, and we know that what's out there, and we know what we want our game to be in terms of vision. And with that being said, something that we could always do is maybe we do have one interactable feature to cross off that check mark, and that is to honk your horn like a trucker.
And the more we invest in this game, the more we can add alternate features that are simmy, that are basically just toggleable options that replace an existing feature in the game, right? Like, we don't want to add. I think what James is basically saying is we don't want to add something that is important to gameplay that can only be done by some sort of sim in the cockpit thing. But there might be some things where it's like you can press the ability button, or you can reach out and push the button that's on the ability bar, or smash it and make that do the ability or whatever. That's easily done, and if people really want that, that's something we can add as an alternate method. We've talked about other alternate control methods too, like arm aiming for the weapons as opposed to head aiming. So alternate controls is definitely something we're interested in adding, because we want to make as many people as happy as we can. But the key thing that James, I think, is saying is the core philosophy is that the default play experience for the game should be that everything is done in as traditional, simple, and intuitive way as possible.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And if some players are better at that, with arm tracking as opposed to HMD, good for them. Like that's a completely different skill, completely different skill level, I believe. But we have to always design around that core philosophy of this is more of a competitive tournament style game, as opposed to a lot of the immersive control experience, which fundamentally to us, I think is like it's cool for a little bit, but then like what's more to the game. And we want to focus on what's more to the game. We want to focus on delivering tournaments and delivering leaderboards and expanding the map, as opposed to just patching and throwing on band-aids here and there for some cool little gimmicks. Now, doesn't mean we can't do that. It just means that that's where our focus is at. And in terms of the horn, I was just thinking about this, James, and Dan, but what's cool is that maybe if you do hit the horn, like everybody can hear it, and you can either use it as a way to distract players and use yourself as bait, or to honk for help. So I think there's there are some cool ideas to that we can definitely piggyback on.
Or every time you ping, you use the ping system, it honks the horn.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Halgren. Collision damage, hardcore mode where you run out of ammo and limbs can be destroyed, resulting in only way to do damage would be a physical attack.
Yeah, that's
It's part of critical shots, James.
Yeah, that's well, one part of that is the limbs can be destroyed. That's also very technically difficult. That's kind of like the landscape getting destroyed. That is going to be a big performance hit. So we have to be very wary of those. But ramming damage we've discussed. I saw someone below ask about death from above, and I think that would be really fun, especially with the updated jump jets. We'd have to see how it feels. It all comes down to testing, and VR is a pretty specific medium where certain things might sound fun, and then when we've tested them, they're just like jarring, and they don't really work for that kind of first-person perspective. But yeah, death from above, ramming. Death from above is more likely. Ramming
could feel very buggy, because then
Yeah.
you could accidentally ram things, or that doesn't feel like you intentionally did. Maybe what he's referring to is as a charge skill, or additional melee weapons outside of stomp.
Yeah, that's actually a big one for the next mech we're planning to design and create. Is we want to maybe have a special ability be a cool melee. But yeah, like getting rammed and getting, especially like knockback, is definitely something we will not do. We've talked about even like a magnet ability, but when you think about that, if you're all of a sudden getting pulled in one direction and you didn't expect it, that just doesn't fly in VR. So that's a big consideration we have to keep in mind.
All right, awesome. I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Maniac. Can I get a graphical downgrade for 120 hertz?
Yes, that is something we could theoretically do. So we could add an option to scale down the resolution and like reduce particles and stuff like that to the options menu, and then get you higher frame rate. That is something we can look into for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is from Rizal. And I know we touched base a little bit on this, but maybe we can explain it a little bit more. Would PCVR allow for more assets, destructible environments, etc.?
Yes. And it would, but it wouldn't. It wouldn't happen in the way you think. Basically, the PC versions would be just graphically superior. It doesn't mean that there's going to be destructibles and things like that. While PC can definitely handle that, that would be something we would do if World of Mechs was first released on PC or was PC exclusive, or where the hardware cap is a lot higher. With Quest 2, balance is everything, and with crossplay, as part of our goals, we want to make sure that everything is balanced around this, our future competitive goals with leaderboards and tournaments and things like that. We really want to expand on the pilot's career profile, meaning that you are always contributing something to your career the more you play. And we want to make sure that that is balanced across the spectrum. Now, in terms of like PC, basically what that means is you'll have higher graphic fidelity. You have better anti-aliasing features running at higher frame rate. You'll be able to adjust a lot more scalability in terms of like digging into ionize and whatnot on the PC platform to customize to your liking. But you'll see more things like bloom. You'll see ambient occlusion, all those like unchecked basically graphic settings that we were not able to implement initially for Quest 2 due to performance.
Right. So one of the things in Quest 2 is that a lot of the lighting is a little bit flat and cartoony. And that's intentional because we can't run with bloom. And bloom is the thing that kind of makes stuff glow in games. And when we can turn that on in PC, you'll get it'll just look different. It'll look a lot different. It'll look much more like current gen. I will add a couple things. One, there are some things we can do with destructibles that are mostly like cosmetic. For example, stuff that doesn't have collision, like foliage, trees, cars, stuff like that. We can make it on PC that stuff gets flattened or knocked down or crunched when you step on it. It's more about blowing up buildings is the sort of thing that we probably can't do. But things like road signs and cars and trees, when you stomp on them and getting them kind of satisfyingly crunch under your feet or under another mech's feet, because you can't really see it under yours. But I think we'll add to a lot to stuff, and that's the sort of thing we can do. The particles will look cooler, right? Like you'll see a lot of chunks of debris falling out of a building. You won't see the building falling down and being destroyed, but you'll see like chunks of concrete fall down and fall on the ground and get kicked around by mechs and stuff like that, right? You'll see, and the one thing that we can do on PCVR that we probably will be the sort of thing that when we first envisioned this game, we were thinking of doing a PC and a Quest 2 version, and our thoughts were that the PC version would have access to larger scale game modes that Quest just can't handle. So one of the things that we've always talked about this game is like we're building it in a very optimized way. So instead of investing time in making a 4v4 simulation look a lot cooler on PC VR, what if we just invest time in making a really fun 12v12 or 15v15 or 20v20 mode? Like how badass would that be on PC VR? To have like this just enormous battle between two giant groups of mechs. And that's something we can do. So, that might be, and that probably wouldn't be available on the Quest 2 native platform, but via cross-buy, if you're on the Rift or if you're on Quest 2 PC, Tether or whatever, you would probably be able to experience that. So,
yeah, that's a good point with the Tether.
All right. Hope that answers your question. Next question is from Nick. Will we ever be able to have more than one upgrade at any one time for the mech and weapons?
Definitely, that is planned. How many per slot, we are not sure yet. We want to test and balance it out, but at least 2, maybe 3, and definitely adding to that the roster of what the upgrades you can buy are. So I mentioned earlier, like different ones for accuracy, like ability cooldown time, ability modifiers, stuff like that. That's
like
in the next couple months.
the components to, I think the special ability slot is going to be a big one, because right now all of the mechs of a class share the same ability, and being able to get like 4 or 5 different variations on that ability that are different for each mech and maybe suit different subclasses playstyles better will be a huge thing that you guys see. And then just like a second component slot on the mech baseline could be cool. So like I think that's relatively easy for us to do. We may add that in an upcoming patch in August. So
Okay. Awesome. Hope that answers your question. So next question is from Gamma Wolf. Maybe a Clan Wars option?
So kind of like what Zenic has said, with the private servers and the planning we're doing for like custom games within that would be kind of like the starting solution to that. And then maybe eventually we could add some type of like official system for
Is
it.
he asking about like clan tags?
He said Clan Wars options. So
Clan wars. Oh, between factions.
yeah, something like that. Like if somebody, basically clans going against each other.
yeah, I mean,
like
I think we'd
Battletech
leave it.
clans.
Yeah, we just leave it up to you for private servers for a while. If
Yeah.
there's like specific support, like the bigger this game gets, the more we can invest in things like cool stat tracking, even like on an external website. Like if you guys wanted to register clans on our World of Mechs site, and we can get that data in game, and we can associate people with clans, that is not out of the question in the future. It's probably like we're talking about next year at this point, right? Like we've got a lot of stuff on our roadmap for this year to finish before we get to stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, that stuff is definitely not out of the question. It's stuff we thought about.
Okay, I hope that answers your question. Next question is for me, from nobody. When will the WOM community meetup be? I just have to meet this community in person. Just to let you know, we have about 5 different community events planned for the month of August. One of them being, a community-based night. So just keep an eye on announcements, and as soon as it's, ready to go out, we will let you guys know as soon as possible. But we have lots of stuff to be involved with you guys, answer your questions, talk with you guys, hang out, and have a good time.
A lot of our community is in the UK and in EU, and then a lot of our community is in the US. We're based almost entirely in the US. We do have one UK dev who maybe I don't know if we're putting too much pressure on. Be like Igor, you host the entire.
Yeah, poor Igor. I wouldn't want to do that.
But yeah, I mean, like definitely, like you guys should take initiative on that. Like Ace Pilots, if you guys want to be like, hey, I am in New York. Anybody want to meet up at this bar or whatever? Like, we'll promote it if you guys want to do it.
Oh, definitely. Even with that, or just in the Discord, even just in voice chats and stuff, just let Josh and I know, and we'll promote the heck out of it.
When Elon Musk develops teleportation, I'll be right there.
Same. All right. So I hope that answers your question, nobody. On to the next question is from Zeno. Can you make a black skin for all the mechs so we can have night map variations of the maps, or change in seasons on current maps?
So that is that has been talked about, and right now my focus is on the map expansions, which is coming out first. One thing we could do is definitely we talked about the basically day-night variations. And we would have to piggyback that, and that would require further discussion between James and I and the rest of the team. And that is balancing out, like, nighttime modes with some type of visibility, whether it's night vision or thermal, or whether or not thermal is going to be a skill or etc. So that is something that is TBD. But as our priority right now is map expansions.
Yeah, I remember Parker was showing me pretty recently some very cool skin things with glowing. It won't really be glowing on the Quest 2, but it will be the kind of like night mode, or like the night visibility for mechs in the distance during a night mode. It would look pretty cool, so definitely something we're considering.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Next question is from Josh Washup. Will World of Mechs not be a game without meta?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Definitely, Meta gave us our initial seed funding. I mean, we were initially pitching this to a bunch of other investors for a PC version and a PC VR version, or even a pancake mode PC version, where the initial concept was actually just like a mega scale mech versus mech game, like 50v50. And we were like, well, we'll make it really low. We'll make it really like performant. We'll make the graphics fidelity low, but we'll balance it out with it being just like massive, insane scale of combat. And with that, we were developing that, and we were like, hey, actually, this would work pretty well on like mobile or VR platforms, because in a smaller scale, it is extremely performant. We like made that case to Meta, and they basically gave us almost all of our initial funding. And then the PC deal fell through, so we refocused everything on the Meta version. The Meta port was originally the Quest 2 port was originally going to be a secondary port of the game, where we told Meta like, hey, we're going to launch this game on PC VR and etc. and have this big scale, and then the Quest 2 version will be able to play in like smaller maps and smaller versions. It would be like the alternate port. But then the Quest 2 version became our lead SKU, and we focused everything in on that, and I think that turned out really well. So
Stars aligned.
Yes, they did. Awesome. I hope that answers your question, Josh. Next question, which I think it's a fantastic question from Riesel. As a small indie team, what was the most difficult challenge you had to overcome with creating World of Mechs?
Will, I don't know if Will, James, you guys want to?
I would say, I would definitely say performance was the biggest challenge. Everyone thinks VR is like this, super high tech, requires, heavy hardware, and when you go out and you buy a Quest 2, you're thinking you get, you're getting bang for buck, like, a Ferrari of VR systems, which some of you probably know that's not the case, especially if you know what you're purchasing anyways. But essentially Quest 2 is at least beat our expectations in terms of the challenge for performance, and I think the same would go for any developer on VR, especially on Quest 2. So you're basically designing a game for a Android phone, because that is basically the hardware. It's just that it's so accessible, and that was the challenge, was because before, when I had originally designed the map, we had high resolution buildings, and the buildings had nice beveled edges and all these cool signs and billboards, and the grass was actually a landscape that had deformation and normal maps and things like that. And then once we started, and this was off of a base toolkit, all the stuff that we had when we were originally pitching for PC, right? And when we started putting this together as Quest 2 became our primary SKU, it was just like, oh, this runs like complete butt, So, so having to kind of refocus the visuals to something that's more minimalistic, and and pay attention to other games, and why they kind of opt in for more of the cartoony shaders and stuff like that is because of basically what Dan mentioned earlier about draw calls and how that directly impacts performance. And it's certainly stuff that I've learned a lot from and continue to improve, especially with our upcoming map expansion. And yes, that means Aftermath is going to be receiving about a 25% size increase in terms of the map size, as well as port. Those are our two biggest. That's our two biggest focuses right now. But the challenge, to answer your question, the challenge for me has been performance.
I think that's true for everyone. I think that's like a kind of global issue. I mean, when we had to turn off Bloom, I can tell you that like most of the developers, our heart sank.
James was sad. He was so sad.
Yeah, we had to
His
buck him up a little bit. But I think like that's balanced out, like Will said, with like a really good team that was supporting us at Meta, a really well well integrated UE4 SDK for Oculus and all that stuff. So in the end, it was, we worked on mobile games before. We worked on like releasing stuff on platforms we've never worked on before. That's been a lot harder than this. So ultimately, it wasn't that bad. But that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, another thing with not just the challenge of the technical aspects of the hardware, but also VR itself is very interesting to design for, because there are a lot of things that you just can't do. Like I mentioned earlier, you just can't really have somebody get pulled in a direction from a magnet ability or something, where that makes perfect sense in a PC game. Anywhere else, like you just see them move. If you're physically getting pulled in like directions you're not expecting, it just doesn't work. But yeah, I think with the technical limitations, it kind of forced us to focus in, and I think that was a really fun part of the challenge, and also why the game at launch is honestly, it's pretty arcadey and there's a lot of simplicity to it. We wanted to try to capitalize on that, and we knew that like after launch we would be able to add more components, add more upgrades and stuff like that. But trying to focus in that core gameplay for VR was a lot of fun.
If you ever want to become a VR developer, you have to learn to love roller coasters. Anything that's nausea inducing, because as we're working on this stuff, especially when we're testing, and James is trying to deal with my stuff, which is like, with the game running at 30 FPS, and he's trying to test out LRMs, and he's just has to put the headset down like every 5 minutes. That's definitely a hurdle.
There's a common thing in the industry which is known as like game developer fatigue, which means like when you start to get really sick of the game you're working on. I mean, you're like looking at one tiny aspect of it over and over and over and over again for months, and you're like, God, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Like, I don't want to play this anymore.
Right.
But that's there's ways around that, right? Like to make sure that you have a nice variety of stuff to work on. There's management techniques to deal with that, which we do internally, make sure people don't get burned out. But on VR, that's compounded by the idea of like, I also have to wear this heavy headset on my head every day. So there's like an actual additional physical toll to us. Just like I get neck cramps now of me just
my
like
neck
sitting
is
around
so
with,
strong.
Yeah.
Like Popeye.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope that answers your question. Muse has like a similar question, a little bit more descriptive. So let me go ahead and just also let everybody know we only have time for a couple more questions. But on to Muse. With the draw calls, I guess I'm curious from a technical perspective, what sucks the most of the hardware or causes the biggest bottlenecks? That's the first part of the question.
Well, it's a tough question because so there's a couple different things, right? It's the GPU it's pretty underpowered. The number of pixels it can push is sapped by like you have to run at full resolution. Often in other games, one of the things that you can get away with, it's a kind of a little game dev trick, is you can get away with resolution scaling on like mobile phone games. If you're trying to do like a really high end mobile phone game, you can scale down the output resolution, like the render target resolution, to like 80% or 85%, and then rescale it up when you render it to the screen, and that will let you do things like better shadows, better lighting, etc. And the trade-off is usually worth it. People can't tell the difference with that small resolution drop. In VR, you can tell, so you can't do that. And then having that extreme limit to the draw calls means that you have to like plan everything out. There's this common trade-off in games where when the draw calls means like how many things you're drawing on the screen, and every time you do a draw call, it takes some time on the CPU. So one thing that you can do is you can try to combine a bunch of stuff so that instead of drawing each building individually, you're drawing all the buildings at once. But then the problem becomes you're drawing all the buildings at once, and if you're only looking at one building, you're drawing a bunch of buildings you're not looking at. And so then that takes an additional toll on the GPU. So now you're trying to balance the GPU and the CPU, and it's like, well, which one's more powerful? Which one can we deal with at any given moment, depending on what action's going on, like how much, and you have to make all these trade-offs constantly and just constantly be like, well, I guess we'll uncombine some stuff. I guess we'll dial this back down a little bit. And that was basically what Will had to live through for the past year or so. So, kudos to him for doing that. But yeah, that's the main issue.
Okay, awesome. I hope that answers your question. We got time for maybe about 1 or 2 more questions. Next question is from Rizal. Is the World of Mechs team all original to Studio 369? And do you plan to expand Studio 369? For example, bigger team, bigger budget, game expansion, sequels, etc.
Yeah, the whole development of the game was done internally. The team was, I think, at its biggest, like 10 people, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not even that. Maybe
what we start out as, like 5?
Yeah, it was like 5 to begin with, and then it kind of expanded to 10 when you like account for Nova and like QA and everything else. And yeah, I mean, we're actively developing concepts for World of Mechs 2. We've expanded. The entire studio right now is up to 40 people. We're working on another game, as you guys may know, called Metalcore, which is like a hardcore, higher end PC infantry / vehicle / mech shooter. And we want to do World of Mechs 2. We've been talking to some big name partners with some huge existing mech IPs that I can't mention right now, but are like extraordinarily exciting for us, that are interested in getting us to potentially make, based on the successful World of Mechs, make a version of, for them, like a VR version. But we're also talking about a couple of them, like a larger PC / console version of their mech game. So we're working on a couple other different things too. So yeah, we're expanding like crazy, and we're going to continue to work on World of Mechs and port that and support that. And so our team's, like I said, 40 people now, across the whole studio. So
Yeah, believe me when I say that we're very excited for the future prospect of World of Mechs and continuing development on World of Mechs and beyond. So rest assured, we're not going anywhere. We absolutely love the transparency with the community, and we love working on this game. So it's something that there's a lot to look forward to as this product continues to evolve.
Yeah, it's still a small team working, so it's you're not going to see like an entirely new game every month, but I think you're going to see slow and steady, really solid progress every month with a nice size patch with cool new features for you. And we're hoping that by the time we're starting to talk about ports to other platforms, we're able to do like even larger pushes for you guys to enjoy.
And to be clear, that like the 40 people in Studio 369 are not World of Mechs developers, all of them, and they won't be like focused on that. So
yeah, we have a number of teams now, but the World of Mechs team is still going to be moving forward steadily on the project. So
yes.
All right.
Came up earlier, and just quick. I think I saw a couple of it, so I wanted to address it. Free for all, that's something we'd consider, and definitely it would be an option in the custom game modes if we add it to the like multiplayer playlist in quick play is still to be decided, but a version of free for all should be available eventually.
Thanks for catching that. There's so many questions.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and I don't know if you guys have a few extra minutes to kind of like go over our August roadmap.
Big shout out to our ace pilots, you guys. I know we've been heads down, and for all of you that are here, and for all of you guys that have been really setting a good example on the servers and kind of inviting folks to the community. You're helping us grow, and you're directly doing us a huge favor with that, and that's something we definitely do want to repay in kind.
Yeah, and you'll be first in line to test any of our new games that we make.
100%. 100%. You guys have done a fantastic job, and we definitely appreciate it. And thank you. Thank you so much. And for any of the other members of the community who have been nothing but positive and also helping other people out, thank you as well. You guys are absolutely amazing. And we wouldn't be here without you guys.
Yeah, being able to just jump on the servers and people being nice in like a combat shooting game is really, really awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, it's rare, but it's amazing. This community, we want to continue to make it positive and keep it positive. Everybody so far has had very good vibes.
Yes.
So we appreciate that so much. I don't know if you guys have like about 10 minutes to go over the August roadmap. To kind of
Yeah.
I
break it
gotta
down.
I gotta run for another call, but James, if you want to run that, that's fine.
We are
Thanks,
making
everybody.
adjustments
Thank you, Dina.
to the roadmap. Yeah,
Bye,
thanks.
D-Nick.
There will be some adjustments to the roadmap. A couple of the things might get shifted around a little bit, but some of it's being brought up from later months. For example, the party system, or sorry, the custom games was slated for September. We're gonna put that in August, hopefully, and then kind of rearrange accordingly, just because we know that is one of the bigger important requested features. So some other things in August, we're gonna get a capture the flag game mode in, which we're starting to test now. We're really excited about it. Like component upgrade improvements was maybe slotted for August. That might be a bigger push with trying to get like more options in and getting the balance down, because if you go from one component to 3 per slot, like you're gonna run into some new balance issues that you need to take care of. So we'll be doing that, probably reaching out to ace pilots and other people who want to test the betas with us, or not betas, but the upcoming updates. Custom key binds is slated for August. So yeah, we'll probably do a little bit of reorganizing and reprioritizing on the roadmap and then post it again. But a lot of exciting things that we're really amped to get to you guys.
Okay, and that wraps it up for the August roadmap.
Yeah, I think that's all we got for now.
September we got yeah, you can review our roadmap on the roadmap link at 369.fun. There is you could basically go through, that's kind of our high level roadmap. Things might get juggled around, but in terms of art, we got the map expansions that I'm directly working on. Aftermath is going to receive a 25% increase in size. The capture points are going to be pivoted there. All the game modes are going to be adjusted to scale, and that's going to include single player as well. September, we're looking at potentially a new map. So I've got that slated on my plate as well. So right now we're in the big discussion of the new map and getting some preliminary designs set out to make it a lot of fun. But yeah.
Yeah. And like D-Nick mentioned, we're kind of doing the cadence of smaller patches and bigger patches. And these highlighted things on the roadmap are like part of the bigger patches. But as you guys have seen, like the weekly updates that we do, we're fixing little bugs and adding quality of life features. So that'll definitely still be a goal of ours.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for going over the roadmap just a little bit, just to clarify some things for people. And like they said, we'll kind of be readjusting the roadmap accordingly. And yeah, so I would say let's call it a wrap. We will be doing more AMAs at least once a month to answer any of you guys' question. And about a week prior, I'll make sure that the AMA questions channel is open so you guys are able to ask your questions ahead of time, especially if you can't make it. But Will, James, thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Nova and Josh, and everyone here. It's really awesome to communicate with you guys and get these updates in your head. And yeah, appreciate you being here.
Yep. Likewise, keep it up. We do keep tabs in chat, so that we stay on top of what's going on with the community. So, feel free to constantly express feedback, and we're here for you guys, and we will always be pushing that direction to only make the game better.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I think it's time you guys boot up your Quest 2s and start destroying the opposition. I don't want to keep you guys.
Hell yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you guys later.
Have a great day,
Have a
everybody.
good day, everyone.
Cheers.